I'd like to talk to you for a moment about magnitude. We're out here on the Mojave segment of the San Andreas, and if you remember in surviving the big one, at that time the scientists believed it would produce about a magnitude 8.3. Now, I've got some great news, and at least to me it's fantastic news. The most recent studies on the San Andreas indicate that it would produce anywhere between a 7.3 and a 7.9 earthquake, which is a lot smaller than an 8.3. If you remember the Alaska quake in 1964, that was a magnitude 9.2. That's 38.2 earthquakes and energy release all at the same time. But to really understand what magnitude means to us, I think we need to listen to the experts.
The 1964 Great Alaska earthquake was one of the largest earthquakes ever recorded. It was a magnitude 9.2 earthquake. And up in Alaska, the situation in which we have there is that one plate, the Pacific plate, is diving under another plate. In California, we have a different sort of tectonics going on. We have the San Andreas fault, and we don't consider the San Andreas fault to be capable of generating earthquakes of that magnitude.
The basic way to think of magnitude is that earthquakes do not occur at points, they occur on areas. And the larger the area, the larger the magnitude earthquake.
When we say that the energy goes up from a magnitude 6 to a 7, we say that the energy goes up a factor of 30. And for many people, they translate that in their minds to thinking that must mean that the strength of the shaking will go up a factor of 30 also. And of course, it doesn't work like that. A 6 can already shake quite intensely, and if you were to shake 30 times as strong, nothing would survive. It would be such strong shaking it would break your legs, and that doesn't happen in an earthquake.
The strong shaking in a large earthquake is spread over a very large area compared to a small earthquake. So while the shaking may be a little bit more intense for a very large earthquake, that intense shaking is spread out over the very large area, and in effect is not much more intense than an earthquake which is considerably smaller, say a Northridge type earthquake of magnitude 6.7. The people that rode out the Northridge earthquake probably experienced the strongest ground shaking that we would expect in California. These were the people that sat right over the fault itself in the epicentral area. We don't expect that a big one on the San Andreas will shake people much more strongly than that earthquake. And in fact, the folks in Northridge probably experienced the strongest shaking that they'll ever experience, even in the case of a big one on the San Andreas fault.
Well, I'm right here on the San Andreas fault at Pallet Creek. And this is an area where the scientists have done a lot of research in looking at the history of earthquakes that have occurred here on the San Andreas. What I want to talk to you about are some of the myths regarding the San Andreas. Many people have heard that California is expected to crack and fall off into the sea, and where I'm standing is New Malibu Estates. Well, this just isn't going to happen. The reason is the San Andreas is a strike-slip fault. It's not going to drop off or dive under. The other thing people are afraid of is that in an earthquake, the ground's going to open up and swallow them. And we just don't experience that in earthquakes. But if you don't believe me, let's listen to the experts.
In the 1960s, when plate tectonics were first discovered, people discovered that the Baja Peninsula had broken away from the mainland and that the Gulf of California had opened up and that things were changing on a very large scale in California. And some people imagined, well, maybe that means that we're about to all be part of the ocean and that these things would happen in minutes. Of course, what they didn't realize was that that plate tectonic phenomena happened over 10 or 20 million years, and that everything is moving on a geologic scale only inches per year.
And it actually is not moving away from the coast, it's moving adjacent to the coast. And so over the long term, over millions of years, we won't be in the ocean, we'll just be a little further north than we are right now.
There's no way that we expect California to move at very large rates into the ocean, and it hasn't happened in the geologic past. And I think that those visions of California in the ocean are just the imaginings and dreams of some very creative people.
I think Hollywood is great. They have so much artistic freedom, but they can also perpetuate a lot of myths. You know, one of the recent movies I recall are people getting pitched out of skyscrapers and the earth opening up and swallowing people and closing up again. Something like this really can't happen during a great earthquake in Los Angeles.
Sometimes there are some cracks that open up when the ground moves, and the faults are not perfectly smooth. They're fairly bumpy, so in places where they're not in complete contact, there's some small openings. There's a funny story about the 1906 earthquake where apparently a cow was swallowed up by the earthquake during the rupture. By the time the reporters got out, there was a tail sticking outside of this crack in the earth, and the cow was at the bottom of this crack. Apparently the earth swallowed this cow. However, it turns out that some of the farmers had played a prank on the media, the local media north of San Francisco, by taking a cow that had been killed earlier and putting it in this crevasse that opened up along the side of the San Andreas.